morning. You're watching DD India and I'm Preeti presenting this edition of News on the Hour, a show which we get for you every morning to make sure that you keep yourself abreast with everything that's been making it to the headlines. On behalf of DD India, we wish you all a very happy Dussehra to the festival which marks the victory of good over evil. And with this, we will kickstart this edition of News on the Hour. First, we get you the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to virtually address event to launch 7 new defence companies carved out of the Ordnance Factory Board. The move will bring in efficiency and competitiveness in the defence manufacturing sector. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will virtually perform Bhumi Pujan ceremony of Saurashtra Patel Seva Samaj's hostel and library complex for 1500 students. Union Home Minister Amit Shah to visit Andaman and Nicobar Islands today to take stock of various development initiatives in the archipelago. Home Minister will also visit the cellular jail in Port Blair and pay tributes to freedom fighter Veer Savarkar. US FDA advisors unanimously vote to recommend booster shots of Moderna's COVID vaccine for Americans over 65 years of age and other high-risk people. In sports, final match of IPL will take place at Dubai International Cricket Stadium, where Chennai Super Kings will take on Kolkata Knight Riders. And Dussehra, marking the victory of good over evil, is being celebrated across the country today. President Ramnath Kovind will celebrate Dussehra with Indian Army soldiers deployed in Ladakh's Dras area. Alright, those are the top stories. Let's get you the news in detail. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will deliver a video address in an event organized by Defence Ministry to dedicate the 7 new defence companies to the nation today. The Defence Minister, Minister of State for Defence and representatives from the Defence Industry Associations will be present on the occasion. The government has also decided to convert Ordnance Factory Board from a government department into 700% government-owned corporate entities as a measure to improve self-reliance in the defence preparedness of the country. This move will bring about enhanced functional autonomy, efficiency and will unleash new growth potential and innovation. Prime Minister will also perform the Bhumi Pujan ceremony of Hostel Phase 1 constructed by Saurashtra Patel Seva Samaj in Surat. The hostel building has residential facilities for around 1500 students. It also contains an auditorium and a dedicated library for the students. Construction of Hostel Phase 2 to accommodate around 500 girls will start from next year. Saurashtra Patel Seva Samaj is a registered trust established in 1983 whose main objective is educational and social transformation of weaker sections of the society. It helps in preparing students for various competitive exams and also provides them with a platform for entrepreneurship and skill development. And now a quick update on nationwide COVID vaccination drive. India's COVID vaccination coverage has achieved 97 crore landmark. Over 97.14 crore vaccine doses have been administered so far across the country, out of which more than 30 lakh vaccine doses were administered in the last 24 hours. India is marching ahead with another achievement in its fight against the pandemic. The 100 crore doses target is expected to be achieved by October 18th or 19th. Announcements will be made on airplanes, ships, metros and at railway stations when India achieves its target of 100 crore COVID vaccine doses. SpiceJet will wrap planes with posters of 1 billion vaccines with images of Prime Minister Modi and healthcare workers on the day the target of 100 crore doses is achieved. And after the target is achieved, the government will go in mission mode to ensure that those who have taken their first dose take their second dose as well, to ensure that they are protected against the virus. And as the country is inching towards 100 crore vaccination target, health workers in Arunachal Pradesh are performing their duties to achieve the landmark. These brave health workers crossed a raging river to administer the vaccine to those living on the other side so that no one is left out. Such brave health workers have played an important role in taking the vaccination figures to 100 crores in the country. Home Minister Amit Shah is on his visit to the Union Territory of Andaman and Nicobar. On his visit, Home Minister will visit the cellular jail at Port Blair and also pay respects to revolutionary freedom fighter Veer Savarkar. Besides this, the Home Minister is also expected to flag off the GoGo bus service for tourists from Port Blair. He is also expected to engage with party workers and attend other programs during his visit. India has been re-elected to the UN Human Rights Council for 2022-24 for a sixth term with overwhelming majority. The permanent mission of India to the United Nations expressed gratitude to the UN membership for reposing its faith in India. India's permanent mission said that India will continue to work for promotion and protection of human rights through Samman, Samvad and Sahyog. And India received 184 of the 193 votes cast in these elections. This year, a total of 18 seats were up for election under the rotating membership system with 3-year terms on the 47th UN Member Council. The countries needed a minimum of 97 votes to get elected to the Council. India's permanent representative to the United Nations, T.S. Tirumurti, expressed pride at India getting re-elected to the United Nations Human Rights Council for a sixth term with an overwhelming majority. Ambassador Tirumurti called it a proud day for the country. He thanked colleagues of all UN member states for their support. India continues to battle the pandemic, and in the last 24 hours, 16,862 new cases were reported. Meanwhile, 19,391 patients recovered from the virus on Thursday. This has increased total recoveries to 3,33,82,100. India's recovery is the highest since March 2020 and is currently at 98.07%. Active cases account for less than 1% of the total cases, and it is the lowest since March 2020 and is now at 0.6%. Active caseload is lowest in 216 days and now stands at 2,03,678. The weekly positivity rate remains below 3% for the last 112 days and is currently at 1.42%. The daily positivity rate is also less than 3% for the last 46 days and is now at 1.43%. Testing capacity in the country has been ramped up. On Thursday, 11,80,148 samples were tested for COVID. A total of 58 crore 88 lakh 44,673 samples were tested across the country. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, who is on a week-long trip to the US, and the United States Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen met on Thursday at Washington, D.C. for the 8th ministerial meeting of the India-US Economic and Financial Partnership. The 8th India-US Economic Financial Partnership marks the growing importance of the India-US partnership in the 21st century. It serves as the framework to cement the economic bonds between the two vibrant democracies and also build the foundation for greater cooperation and economic growth in the future. Both the leaders discussed a range of subjects, including the macroeconomic outlook and also recovery from the pandemic, financial, regulatory and technical collaboration, multilateral engagement, climate finance and anti-money laundering, and combating the financing of terrorism. Finance Minister and US Treasury Secretary affirmed their commitment to continue engagements both bilaterally and multilaterally to address global economic issues. The importance of fighting illicit finance and the need for continued cooperation in tackling money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism was also underpinned by Union Finance Minister and US Treasury Secretary during the meeting. Both the countries agreed on further engagements on emerging financial sector topics such as cross-border payments and payment systems and the development of the International Financial Services Center. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also attended the IMF breakfast session at the IMF headquarters in Washington, D.C. yesterday. She stated that we should freely and openly share medical research and develop adaptive, responsive, affordable and accessible healthcare systems. The Finance Minister also conveyed that a policy package of an unprecedented scale by the Government of India, including fiscal, monetary and financial measures, provided support to save lives and protect livelihood activities. She stated that India has also continued its agenda of structural reforms during the pandemic. Wide-ranging reforms, including in the sectors of agriculture, labor and asset monetization, are expected to contribute towards acceleration of the economy. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also met with the Minister of Economy for Argentina, Martin Guzman, on the sidelines of World Bank and IMF annual meetings 2021 in Washington, D.C. The ministers exchanged ideas on various issues, including recovery from COVID pandemic, need for enhanced cooperation in healthcare, and G20 finance track priorities. Managing Director of International Finance Corporation, Mukhtar Diop, and IMF has called on Union Finance Minister on the sidelines at the World Bank IMF annual meetings 2021 in Washington, D.C. Union Finance Minister also met Indonesian Minister of Finance Sri Mulyani Indrawati on the sidelines of World Bank IMF annual meetings 2021 in Washington, D.C. on Thursday ahead of the G20 Indonesia presidency. As part of the ongoing Indo-US defense cooperation, the Joint Military Training Exercise Ex-Yudh Abhyas 2021 will be conducted at Joint Base Elmendorf, Richardson, Alaska from 15 to 29th October. The contingent, comprising of 350 personnel of Infantry Battalion Group, departed on Thursday. Exercise Yudh Abhyas is the largest running joint military exercise and defense cooperation endeavor between India and the US. This will be the 17th edition of the joint exercise, which is hosted alternately between the two countries. The previous version of this exercise was held at Mahajan Field Firing Ranges in Bikaner, Rajasthan in February this year. This exercise is another step in the growing military cooperation between the two countries. The exercise aims at enhancing understanding, cooperation and interoperability between the two armies. The joint exercise will focus on combined arms maneuvers in cold climatic conditions and is primarily aimed at sharing tactical level drills and learning best practices from each other. The exercise will culminate after a 48-hour long validation. Up next, we're heading for a short commercial break. You're watching News on the Hour. Stay with us.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. Let's get to international updates. At least 6 Lebanese Shiites were killed and several others were injured in gunfire in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. The visuals show an uncanny calm in the streets, and then suddenly bullet shots were heard after people started to run for safety. Protesters were seen hurling rocks on the streets, surrounded by smoke. The shooting left behind chaos with damaged shops, bullets in the streets and destroyed cars. Authorities said that the attack was on protesters who were going to participate in a demonstration called by Hezbollah to demand the removal of the judge investigating last year's devastating port explosion in Beirut, which killed over 200 people. The military deployed tanks and troops to quell the street battles that sparked memories of the 1975-1990 civil war and highlights a deepening crisis over the probe into August 2020 blast that is undermining the government's efforts to tackle one of the most dramatic economic meltdowns in history. The army deployed heavily in Tayuna area and was seen patrolling the area, said that it would open fire against any armed person on the roads. At a school nearby the shooting site, the teachers instructed children and other students to lie face down on the ground with their hands on their heads. Those injured in the incident were also rushed to hospitals to get timely treatment. Meanwhile, the Lebanese president has said that those responsible for the country's worst street violence in more than a decade would be held accountable. He said the government will not allow anyone to take the country hostage for their own interests. Lebanon's Prime Minister said that the violence on Thursday was a setback for the country. He also added that his cabinet was working towards providing the International Monetary Fund with necessary financial figures ahead of the talks to pull the country out of its economic meltdown. The Prime Minister also called for calm and in a tweet announced that Friday would be a day of public mourning for the lives of those killed in violence. In Norway, a bow and arrow attack in which a Danish convert to Islam is suspected of killing 5 people appears to have been an act of terror. The police named the suspect as Espen Andersen Brathen, a 37-year-old living in the Kongsberg municipality where the attack took place on Wednesday evening. A police attorney said that Brathen had acknowledged killing the victims. The suspect's lawyer confirmed that Brathen was cooperating with the police and giving detailed statement. Police had been concerned about signs of radicalization in the suspect before the attacks carried out with a bow and arrow and other weapons. Meanwhile, Brathen is in custody and he is believed to have acted alone. A court will decide on Friday how long the police can keep him in their custody. Meanwhile, Norwegian Prime Minister condemned on Thursday the horrible and cruel bow and arrow attack in Kongsberg, in which 5 people were killed. Speaking on his first day in office after winning an election last month, he said that the attack highlights the fact that preparedness is the joint task for a society. In the United States, a White House commission agreed that Congress has the legal power to expand the Supreme Court, but the group was divided on whether lawmakers should actually do it. That's according to the draft discussion materials released on Thursday by White House, which tasked 30-odd experts with considering an array of possible reforms to the 9-member High Court. The White House Commission studying potential changes to the U.S. Supreme Court said expanding the number of justices would pose considerable risks and might further politicize the court. Members of the commission formed by President Joe Biden appeared more positive about the benefits of imposing term limits and staggering appointments out over time. But they noted that it might not be possible to make such a change without amending the U.S. Constitution. The documents are to be used as a source of debate by members of the commission who are holding a meeting on Friday and will prepare a report for Biden and turn it over to him by mid-November. In more international updates, Russia will hold Afghanistan talks in Moscow on 20th October, and this will be the first meeting of the Moscow format since Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. The Moscow format was launched in 2017 as a 6-party mechanism for consultations between representatives of Afghanistan, China, Pakistan, Iran, India and Russia. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said that India will participate in the Moscow format meeting on Afghanistan.
We have received an invitation for the Moscow format meeting on Afghanistan on October 20th. We will be participating in it. I don't have a final confirmation who will be attending, but it's likely that we will have it at the Joint Secretary level.
On humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan, he said that India's policy towards Afghanistan is guided by friendship with Afghan people. He said that India has in the past provided assistance both for infrastructure as well as humanitarian measures as well. And thousands of Afghan evacuees are waiting at a US military base in midwestern state of Indiana to be resettled into local communities across the US. More than 6,600 migrants are now at the Indiana National Guard's Camp Alterbury, one of 8 facilities designated to house the migrants while they are processed. An estimated 53,000 Afghans who left their country after the Taliban seized power in August are being housed on military bases across the US. Officials say that many are awaiting medical and security checks before they are cleared for resettlement. Once they are cleared, the families work with non-profit organizations that help them find housing, sponsorship and work authorization, a process aid agencies expect to take several weeks at least. Then they are resettled in local communities across the country. It is unclear exactly how many Afghan evacuees will be resettled in the US, but the Pentagon has said that it expects the total to exceed 100,000. Locals in Taiwan's southern district of Kaohsiung grieved on Thursday after a residential building caught fire, killing 46 and wounding 41 others. Workers were seen clearing debris from the fire late into Thursday night. The fire broke out in the 40-year-old building in Kaohsiung's Yancheng district in early hours on Thursday morning and was extinguished around dawn. The district's fire department confirmed in a statement that 46 people had died and residents that were left without a home for the night were relocated to relatives' houses. The last ever Alitalia flights landed in Rome's Fiumicino Airport on Thursday evening, and the flight touched the ground the night before its successor, Italia Trasporto Aereo, takes over the state-owned airline. Now, ITA will replace Alitalia and start operating from today after Italy reached a long-awaited deal with the European Commission following months of haggling over the fate of the old loss-making airline. Meanwhile, Alitalia workers protested outside the airport after the last flights landed in Rome. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud met on Thursday to discuss a wide range of bilateral and regional issues, including Iran and Yemen. Calling Al Saud a friend, Blinken said that Washington was committed to the defense of Saudi Arabia. The United States has backed Saudi Arabia, most notably in Yemen, where a Saudi-led coalition has been battling the Houthis for over 6 years. Al Saud said that Washington and Riyadh cooperation had contributed to the region and the entire world. Up next, a quick look at the COVID situation from across the world. As per the figures, then the COVID figures, the numbers have crossed 24 crore mark. With a spike in Delta variant of the virus, various countries in the world are witnessing a surge in the daily new cases. So far, over 24 crore 3 lakh people from across the world have been infected by the virus, while more than 21 crore 77 lakh patients have recovered from it. The highly infectious COVID has claimed lives of 48 lakh 97,000 people across the world. The United States remains the worst affected country by the COVID pandemic, and it is witnessing a spike in the daily new cases due to the Delta variant. Over 4 crore 56 lakh people in the US have been infected, while more than 7 lakh 41,000 people have died in the country due to COVID. panel of expert advisors to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration unanimously voted on Thursday to recommend booster shots of Moderna's vaccine for Americans aged 65 and older and those at high risk of severe illness or occupational exposure to the virus. If the FDA signs off on Moderna's booster, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will make specific recommendations on who should get the shots. Meanwhile, CDC advisors are scheduled to meet next week. The FDA's Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee met on Thursday to consider the additional dose of the vaccine and also will weigh whether to make a similar recommendation for Johnson & Johnson's vaccine on Friday. The vote to back Moderna's booster was 19-0. Also, Moderna is seeking authorization of a booster that contains 50 micrograms of vaccine, half of the strength of its regular dose, but still higher than the Pfizer-BioNTech shot, using similar technology at 30 micrograms. US COVID case rates are declining in 39 states, and the number of unvaccinated people has also declined to 66 million. Now, this was announced by United States President Joe Biden, who praised his plan of introducing vaccine mandates for federal workers and big companies. Biden has credited his path out of the pandemic plan and the administration's urgent push for vaccine requirements. He also praised the continuing work on booster shots as the FDA Advisory Committee reviewed data on Moderna booster doses. The vaccination rates against COVID-19 in the US have risen by more than 20 percentage points after multiple institutions adopted vaccine requirements in the recent months. While case numbers and deaths from the virus are down, the United States still tops the chart of the worst affected nation by COVID-19, and over 4 crore 56 lakh 32,000 people in the country have been infected by the virus, while more than 7 lakh 41,000 Americans have died because of it. Sydney will end its COVID-19 quarantine for fully vaccinated international travellers from 1st of November. The announcement was made by New South Wales Premier that will resume overseas travel after more than 19 months. Australia closed its international borders in March 2020 in response to the pandemic. Only citizens and permanent residents were allowed to enter the country after undergoing a mandatory 2-week hotel quarantine at their own expense. The High Commission of India in Bangladesh handed over a life support ambulance and essential medical supplies to the Kumudini Hospital in Mirzapur. High Commissioner Vikram Doraiswamy handed over the ambulance and oxygen cylinders, respiratory support equipment to the Managing Director of the Kumudini Welfare Trust, Rajiv Prasad Shaha, on Thursday. The brand new ambulance is fitted with modern critical life-saving equipment. It can be used by the paramedics and first responders to provide emergency care and trauma life support to patients en route to the hospital for treatment. The gift represents India's unsavoring and also unswerving and long-term commitment to its unique and special friendship with Bangladesh, and this was said by the press release issued by the High Commission of India. The ambulance is part of the overall program for supply of 109 life support ambulances announced by Prime Minister Modi during his visit to Bangladesh in March this year. Time now for a short break. Stay with us. You're watching News on the Hour. We'll continue with international updates.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India. largest COVID vaccination drive, India is leading the way. As the vaccine reaches every corner of the nation, do not forget the mantra, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi. Let's continue our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination along with social distancing, sanitization and masks.
Mask up, India!
Put your mask on and cover your nose and be safe.
Mask Up India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching News on the Hour, continuing with international updates. Now, these special playgrounds are a unique example to convert hatred into love. The guns which were previously used to commit crimes are now melted to create seesaws, monkey bars, swings and even exercise machines. Over 5,000 firearms were melted to create this very special playground in Lima, Peru, which is constructed with seized guns. Peruvian children and their families on Thursday attended the inauguration of this special playground. The initiative was spearheaded by locals and the superintendents for the control of arms. The seized guns are handed over to a local steel company for melting down and they are repurposed into playground equipment. This initiative is a way of preventing crime and doing something good for the community. And the songs and life story of late Jamaican reggae star Bob Marley are brought to London's West End in a new musical celebrating his legacy. Get Up, Stand Up, the Bob Marley musical, which premieres at the Lyric Theatre this month, follows Marley's rise from the Kingston ghettos to international stardom. Born in 1945 in the rural Jamaican town of 9 Mile, Marley became a global superstar with his hits such as No Woman, No Cry, One Laugh and I Shot the Sheriff. He died of melanoma cancer in 1981 at the age of 36. A new wax figure of Britain's Queen Elizabeth was unveiled at the Madame Tussauds Museum at Blackpool in England's northwest on Thursday. The waxwork of the Queen was carried through the streets of Blackpool and along the promenade in the horse-drawn carriage before arriving outside Madame Tussauds Museum. The new exhibit was displayed beside wax figures of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Japanese fashion magnate Yusaku Misawa gets training in zero gravity ahead of his planned trip to space later this year. His assistant and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Misukin will accompany the space tourist during the 12-day-long trip on a Russian Soyuz spacecraft, which is expected to start on December 8th. Misawa plans to become the first Japanese space tourist to visit the International Space Station. He said he was having to train for months before the flight and that he did not feel scared or anxious so far. And red hot lava overflowed from the main cone of the Kumavia volcano on Thursday. The volcanic activity is in its 4th week and there has been no end in sight to the eruption. Authorities expected the lava flow to advance to the northwest beyond the boundary of the evacuated area. Most people in the area had been evacuated and lava from the eruption has laid waste to nearly 600 hectares in total, destroying about 1,500 houses and other buildings. Earlier on Thursday, a 4.5 magnitude earthquake also rocked the island. Since before the eruption, tremors were registered constantly in La Palma. Former US President Bill Clinton is admitted in a hospital in California where he is undergoing treatment for a non-COVID infection. Doctors said that he is responding well to the treatment. The ex-president was admitted to the hospital after he felt fatigued and was diagnosed with sepsis, an infection of the bloodstream, which doctors believe started as a urinary tract infection. Up next, updates from the world of business now. In the international market, the US stocks ended in the green as companies including Morgan Stanley and United Health gained following strong results. The data on the labor market and inflation also helped soothe worries about the outlook for higher rates. The S&P 500 gained 74.35 points or 1.7% to end at 4,438.15. The Nasdaq Composite gained 248.97 points or 1.71% to 14,824.9, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 532.21 points or 1.55% to 34,910. The four largest consumer banks posted another strong quarter this week as the rebounding economy allowed them to release more cash they had set aside for pandemic losses. JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Wells Fargo and Bank of America reported a combined profit of $28.7 billion for the third quarter. Much of that was driven by the release of a combined $6 billion of funds the banks had put aside for pandemic loan, which have not materialized majorly due to extraordinary government stimulus, aid programs and also loan repayment holidays. The capital of Canada's Arctic territory is facing an acute shortage of water for drinking and cooking. The authorities say that city's water is suspected to be fuel contaminated and ordered its 7,000 residents not to drink it. Iqaluit, which borders Greenland, declared a state of emergency on Tuesday night, asking residents to stop using city water. As the crisis unfolds, the Nunavut government is flying in 80,000 litres of drinkable water. Water is being transported to Iqaluit by plane and is being offloaded at the local airport. Let's talk of sports now. In cricket, Chennai Super Kings are all set to lock horns with Kolkata Knight Riders in the final of the 2021 Indian Premier League at Dubai International Cricket Stadium. The Knight Riders, captained by Eoin Morgan, have managed to qualify for an IPL final 7 years after the 2014 edition. If numbers are anything to go by, then Chennai Super Kings, in their astonishing 9th final appearance and 12 editions, are certain to start as favourites against Kolkata Knight Riders on the Dussehra day. But in terms of trophies, there isn't much of a difference. Chennai Super Kings have 3 titles with 5 final defeats, while Kolkata Knight Riders have won both their finals under Gautam Gambhir. No team has mastered the art of reaching the finals like Dhoni's Chennai Super Kings. The India Under-23 football team is all set to embark on their qualification campaign for the AFC Under-23 Asian Cup Uzbekistan 2022 after being drawn in Group E of the qualifiers. India have been drawn alongside Oman, Kyrgyz Republic and hosts UAE in Group E of the qualifiers, with the matches set to be played between October 25th and 31st at Fujairah Stadium in the UAE. The India Colts are set to assemble in Bengaluru on October 17th before moving to the UAE on October 20th for their matches. US Open champion Emma Raducanu has pulled out of this month's Kremlin Cup, citing a tournament schedule change. The 18-year-old Briton has played only one match since she shot to international stardom with her victory at Flushing Meadows last month, suffering a second-round defeat to Alexandra Sasnovich at the BNP Paribas Open. Raducanu had been due to be back on court at the Kremlin Cup in Moscow, which takes place between 18th and 24th October. However, she announced on Thursday that she is unable to play at the event this year and instead is looking forward to returning to the WTA Tour in the next couple of weeks. Kenyan police has arrested the husband of record-breaking runner Agnes Tirop, who was stabbed to death in a killing that has shocked her home country and the world of athletics. Emmanuel Rotich was nabbed in the coastal city of Mombasa over the death of the 25-year-old double World Championships medalist and also an Olympian who has been hailed as a rising star cut short in her prime. And back home, the festival of Dussehra or Vijay Dashmi is being celebrated today. The festival signifies the victory of good over evil. The annual festival, which is celebrated on the 10th day of the Navratris, signifies Lord Ram's victory over Ravan. The day also marks the end of Ram Leela, a brief retelling of Lakshman, Ram and Sita's story. On Dussehra, towering effigies of Demon King, Ravan, Kumbhakaran and Meghnad, symbolic of evil, are burned down with fireworks, thus reminding the onlookers that no matter what, good always wins over evil. Although the enthusiasm is high among people as always, but the celebrations are low-key this time, again due to the pandemic. President Ramnath Kovind and Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu have greeted the nation on the eve of Dussehra. The President in his message said, Vijay Dashmi celebrated to mark the victory of good over evil. He said that persona of Lord Ram and his righteous conduct as Maryada Purushottam is an ideal for all. He hoped that this festival strengthens the moral foundation of the society and inspires all the citizens to work for nation building. The Vice President in his message said that Dussehra is an occasion to remind everyone of the need to constantly quell the demonic forces and foster goodness and harmony. He hoped that the festival brings in peace, harmony and prosperity for the country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also extended his greetings and good wishes on the occasion of Vijay Dashmi. President Ramnath Kovind will celebrate Dussehra with Jawans at Dras in Ladakh today. President Kovind is on a two-day visit to Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. On his second day of his visit, President Kovind will lay wreath at Kargil War Memorial in Dras and he will also interact with the troops at the War Memorial. President, the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, will participate in Vijay Dashmi celebrations with Shastra Puja at the War Memorial. Earlier on Thursday, the President interacted with troops along with their families at the Northern Command at Udhampur in Jammu and Kashmir. He extended his best wishes to the soldiers on the occasion of Dussehra. And RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat today performed Shastra Puja at the annual Vijay Dashmi festival in Maharashtra's Nagpur. Vijay Dashmi holds a special importance for RSS as RSS was founded on this day in 1925 by Dr. Hedgewar. Also, Vijay Dashmi address of the RSS chief is considered the most important event for the organization, as it is during his address future plans and vision are put forth for all to follow. However, amidst the ongoing COVID pandemic, the RSS has decided to refrain from inviting any chief guest for the annual Vijay Dashmi address. Now, this is the second consecutive year when RSS has not invited any guest for the annual Vijay Dashmi address by RSS chief. Addressing on the occasion, RSS chief said that our country achieved independence due to the relentless freedom struggle. He said that the future generation should know this glorious history in the ongoing Amrit Mahotsav celebration of India's independence. Expressing concerns over the rising population, he said that population policy should be considered once again and that the policy should be made for the next 50 years. RSS chief also talked about the partition of India in 1947. He said that partition of the country is a sad history. The truth of this history should be faced to bring back the lost integrity and unity. The new generation should know that history. The country is also observing the birth anniversary of former President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. He was a teacher, scientist, author, eloquent speaker, whose life and works are a treasure for India. His contributions to the society have been enormous. Kalam served as the 11th President of India between 2002 and 2007. President Ramnath Kovind paid floral tributes to Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam on his birth anniversary at Northern Command, Udhampur, Jammu and Kashmir. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also paid tribute to the People's President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam on his birth anniversary. Sharing old pictures with Dr. Kalam, Prime Minister said that known as Missile Man, Dr. Kalam has dedicated his life in making India strong, prosperous and capable. The Prime Minister added that Kalam will always remain a source of inspiration for the countrymen. World Students' Day is also celebrated on the birth anniversary of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. The United Nations declared the day on October 15, 2010. The day aims to acknowledge the efforts of Kalam towards education and students. And in some other news, schools in Goa have been allowed to resume offline classes for classes 9 to 12 from October 18th onwards. The decision was taken by Education Ministry in consultation with the state government's expert committee on COVID management. The State Education Department has also issued fresh guidelines which urge the heads of educational institutions and managements to take their own decision on resumption of classes. Schools have also been allowed the liberty to follow hybrid mode of teaching if required. The guidelines also state that all schools should sanitize every classroom before reopening of the schools, while directing that only vaccinated staff, both teaching and non-teaching, should be allowed in the school premises. And as the nation is celebrating the 75th year of independence, we take a look at the life of unsung revolutionary freedom fighter Durga Devi Vohra, as today is the day when the great leader passed away. Let's know more about such towering personalities.
In today's episode, we are paying tributes to the great but unsung revolutionary freedom fighter Durga Devi Vohra, also known as Durgavati Devi, who left us on 15 October in 1999. She was a key member of Chandrasekhar Azad and Bhagat Singh's Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, HSRA.
Another association member, Bhagwati Charan Vohra, was her husband, and hence the association members used to call her Bhabhi, and she became popular as Durga Bhabhi in Indian revolutionary circles. At that time, she was one of the few women revolutionaries who actively participated in the armed revolution against the ruling British Raj.
After Saunders's assassination on 17th of December 1928, Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru came to Durga Devi for help. She not only gave them a large sum of money, rather daringly agreed to help them escape Lahore. She posed as the wife of Bhagat Singh and put her infant son Sachin in his lap while Rajguru carried their luggage as their servant.
They passed fearlessly through a police cordon and boarded a first-class train carriage for Lucknow, where they changed trains for Calcutta. In order to avoid recognition, Bhagat Singh had shaved off his beard and cut his hair short the previous day and dressed in a Western attire.
After attending some sessions of the Calcutta Congress, Durga Devi returned to Lahore with her son. In April 1929, Bhagat Singh and his associate Batukeshwar Dutt set off 2 low-intensity homemade bombs among some unoccupied benches of the Central Legislative Assembly.
In Lahore, investigators discovered the HSRA's bomb factory in Kashmir House, which was rented out in Durga Bhabhi's husband Bhagwati Charan's name. They arrested Sukhdev, Jai Gopal and Kishori Lal, but Bhagwati Charan managed to go into hiding.
During this period, Durga Devi supported the families of revolutionaries in Lahore and helped in passing on letters for absconding revolutionaries. She led the funeral procession of revolutionary Jatin Das from Lahore to Calcutta after his death in a 63-day jail hunger strike. She was also involved in the procurement of weapons for the revolutionaries around this time.
In 1929, Bhagwati Charan and Durga Devi were involved in a plot with Chandrasekhar Azad, Yashpal and Vaishampayan to free Bhagat Singh from prison by raiding a police van during his transfer from Borstal to Central Jail in Lahore.
On 28th May 1930, Bhagwati Charan died when he was testing a bomb in a forest and it exploded prematurely in his hand. Following her husband's death, Durga Devi was constantly on the move, staying one step ahead of police.
When Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru were awarded the death sentence, Durga Devi attempted to kill Lord Haley, an ex-governor of Punjab and a staunch enemy of revolutionaries. Although Haley escaped, his several associates died. Durga Devi was caught by the British police and imprisoned for 3 years.
After independence, Durga Devi started living as a common citizen in quiet anonymity in Ghaziabad. She later opened a school for poor children in Lucknow. She died in Ghaziabad on October the 15th, 1999 at the age of 92.
Her courage and fearlessness were indeed like Durga Ma, as she fought against the evil British imperialist forces to free her motherland from foreign rule.
All right, time now for a short break. You're watching News on the Hour. Stay with us.